Hi students, it's Mrs. Gravenese. Today we are going to review lessons 3, 4, and 6 from chapter 1, Modeling Decimals and Decimal Place Value. Your objectives today. Students will be able to represent fractions that name tenths, hundredths, and thousandths as decimals. Students will be able to read and write decimals in standard, expanded, and word form. Here we go. If you're following along with me, we are going to use some of the problems from your My Math book, so you can have that out and ready. And we are going to begin on page 25. So if you have your math book, go ahead to page 25 so that we can do our review. All right. So this lesson is all about modeling fractions and decimals. So let's take a look at these different fraction grids and shade some of the fractions that we see. So the directions say shade the model to show each fraction, write each fraction in word form. So the first model we see is a tenths frame. So this has been split up into 10 equal pieces. The denominator of our fraction is 10, which is why we're using a grid that is into 10 equal pieces. We need to shade in 7 of those tenths. So let's go ahead and do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I've shaded in 7 of the tenths. And now I can write that in word form. In word form, I spell out 7, and then I write the place value of the denominator, tenths. Make sure you have THS at the end of your word so that we know it is a decimal or fraction. Try number 5 on your own. Try shading in 9 tenths and writing it in word form. Okay, so this is what you should have gotten. So you should have shaded in all except for 1, which would be 9 out of 10. And to write that in word form, we write 9 tenths. Make sure you have that THS. All right, let's jump down to number 7. Now we see that the grid has changed a little bit. We have a lot more pieces and they're smaller. This is a hundredths grid. So there are 100 equal pieces in that grid. We have 10 across and 10 going down. We need a hundredths grid this time because our denominator is 100. So let's shade in 5 of those hundredths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can see that this does not equal an entire column. Okay, so before we were shading in an entire column, which would be 1/10. Here we've shaded in less than a whole column, so this is less than a tenth. And let's write that in word form. I have 5 hundredths. When you write hundredths, make sure you have the THS at the end to show that it's a fraction or decimal. Pause the video and try number 8. Okay, let's see how you did. 63 100ths. So I need to shade in 10. So I can count by tens because I know there's 10 in each column. 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 1, 2, 3. So there are 63 100ths, and I write that as SIXTY, 60, THREE, 63 hundredths. Make sure you have your THS. All right, now let's go down to the next section. Write the decimal for each model. So we see that the model is shaded in for us, and I find it helpful to write the fraction first and then go into the decimal. So the fraction for this, I have 10 equal sized pieces, so my denominator is 10, and 2 of them are shaded in, so I have 2 tenths. Now, how does this look as a decimal? We can look at our place value chart, and if we have 2 tenths, that means we need to have a 2 in the tenths place. Well, here's the tenths place. So we need a 2 in the tenths place. I like to put a 0 to represent the fact that there were no whole grids shaded in. So this entire thing was not shaded in, so it's a 0 for wholes and then 2 in the tenths place. Pause the video and try number 11. All right, let's see how you did. Let me count up my tenths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 out of 10. There's my fraction. And I need an 8 in the tenths place this time. So I'll get rid of this 2, and I need 8 in my tenths place. So it's 0.8. All right, let's try number 13. Now we can see that our grid is in 100 equal-sized pieces. So that means, since we have 100 equal-sized pieces, that our denominator for the fraction will be 100. So this is cut up into hundredths. How many of the hundredths are shaded in? Well, each column is 10, so we don't have to count those 10 individually. We know there are 10. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Now, I want to point something out to you. We have an entire column of 10 that's shaded in. And then we have 7 extra pieces. Well, let's see how that looks on our place value chart. So if we have 17 100ths, we had one frame of 10 colored in. And then we had 7 extra little hundredths pieces. So when we place that on our place value chart, we can see that we have 1 in the tenths place, 7 in the hundredths place. So as a decimal, this looks like 0, because there are 0 whole grids colored in, 0.17. Pause the video and try number 14. All right, let's see how you did. So for this one, I count 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, and then 89 out of 100. As a decimal, that would be 0.89 because there were 8 of these full tenths columns and then 9 extra little hundredths pieces. All right, let's go to lesson 4 now. So we are now writing these as decimals. The direction, this is page 31, in case you were wondering. Shade the model, then write each fraction in word form and as a decimal. So for number 4, we have tenths. Let's shade in 3 of those tenths. 1, 2, 3. In word form, that looks like 3 tenths. Don't forget your THS. As a decimal, I need a 3 in the tenths place. So here's my tenths place. It's the first position after your decimal point. I need a 3 in that tenths place. So our decimal is 0.3. All right, let's try number 5. 86 100ths. We have a 100ths grid, which means there are 100 equal-sized pieces here. We need to color in 86 of them. To make it easier, I'm going to count by tens. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, and now I'll count by ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's 86. And it was a hundredths grid, so I need to write hundredths. Now, how does that look as a decimal? We didn't color in the whole thing, so we know it's a 0 point. And we had 8 of those groupings of 10. We had 8 whole columns. So on my place value chart, I had 8 of those tenths columns. And then how many extra hundredths did I have? 6. So our decimal is 0.86. Pause the video and try number 6, 99 100ths. Okay, let's see how you did. So you should have everything colored in except for one little hundredths square. Sometimes it's easier to subtract to figure out how many not to shade in. 99 hundredths. And that looks like 0.99. How'd you do? All right, so now we're moving into thousandths, and this might be new for you this year. So this is a thousandths cube, and a thousandths cube is made up of 10 of the hundredths grids, all stacked behind each other, or you could think of them as stacked on top of each other. So it's three-dimensional now, okay? We have a length of 10 units, a width of 10 units, and a height of 10 units. So it's 10 by 10 by 10. That gives us 1,000. So let's shade in 51 of these thousandths. I'm going to still count by tens. There's a column of 10, 20, 30, 40, 51. In word form, I write it out as 50, 1 thousandths, THS. Now let's see how this looks as a decimal. Now the rules change a little bit on this one. So it looks like we've colored in tenths because we have these columns, but not really, because remember that we need 10 of these hundreds grids. So a tenth would be an entire hundredths grid colored in, and we did not do that. So we don't really have any tenths colored in for the thousandths cube. So when I go to my place value chart, I didn't color in a whole panel, which would be a tenth. But I did color in 51 thousandths. So remember that the last digit of your decimal number needs to have that place value that you want. So if I'm using a thousandths cube, I must have 1, 2, 3 decimal values. So we need this 0 here so that we know this number's in thousandths. Without that 0, everything would be shifted over and it would be 51 hundredths, which is quite different. So our decimal is 0.051. Try number 8 on your own. Pause the video. All right, let's see how you did. 22 thousandths. So I'm going to shade in 10, 20, 21, 22. In word form, you should have 22 thousandths. Now, let's see how you did as a decimal. This is the tricky. Because I have thousandths, I need 3 places after your decimal point, or 3 places to the right of your decimal point. So what you could do is put these lines, if you're not using a place value chart. That way you know you have to use all 3 spaces. Thousandths, 3, or thousandths, third. So I have 22 of them. Now, if I put 22 here, I didn't use my thousandths place, so that won't work. I have to shift everything over so that I have my last digit in the third or thousandths place. And that means I need a 0 for the tenths. Because remember, when we're using a cube, a whole panel, this whole front section, is considered 1/10 of that cube. And we did not color in that entire front panel. All right, let's look at one more skill, which is decimals, decimal place value, and writing decimals in standard, expanded, and word form. Name the place of the highlighted digit and write the value. So they're asking us for 2 different things. They're asking us for the place, which is the word. And then they want the value, which is the number. I know that can be a little confusing. Let's take a look. We have 63.47. I'm going to put that on my place value chart. So the 7 is the highlighted number. So that's the number we're giving the place and the value. So what is the place of this? It's in the hundredths place. And so what's the value? If we have 7 in the hundredths, we could write that as two different ways. We could write it as 7 100ths, or we could write it as a decimal, 0.07, a 7 in the hundredths place. Let's do number 8. 4.072. And we are looking at the 2. So the 2 is in the thousandths place. If I were to read this, I read it as 4 and 72 thousandths. So the 2 is in the thousandths place. It's the third number after your decimal point. So what is it worth? 2 1,000ths, or a 2 in the third thousandths place. Remember, thousandths, third. Let's jump down and do a couple of the different forms. Write each number in standard form. 13 and 9/10. Here's my and. Remember, your decimal point says and. So what was before the and? 13. And what was after and? It said 9/10, which means I'm using the tenths place, and I have 9 in there. So 13.9. Let's look at the next one. 50 and 6/100ths. So remember that your decimal point says and. What was before and? 50. What was after and? 6/100ths. We need the hundredths place, which is 2 after the decimal point. So we need to put our 6 in the hundredths, which means in the tenths, we need a 0. Without this 0, it's wrong. So we have 50.06. Be careful on that one. And then let's do a few expanded form. For this one, using a place value chart is super helpful. We have 1 in the tens place. Here's tens, we need a 1. We have 1 in the ones place. Here's the ones place, we need a 1. So far we have 11. We need a 9 in the tenths place. Here's the tenths. We need a 2 in the hundredths. Here's the hundredths. And we need a 3 in the thousandths. There you go. So our number is 11.923, which is 11 and 923 thousandths. Pause the video and do the next 3 problems on your own. Okay, here's what you should have gotten. 7 is in the tens. There are no ones. 1 is in the tenths. There are no hundredths. And 5 is in the thousandths. Watch out for that 0. Number 16, 5 and 3 thousandths. 5 and, oh my goodness, I have thousandths. I need 3 spaces. And I have 3 thousandths. So I need a 3 in the thousandths, which means these guys are zeros. And lastly, number 17, 6 times 10 is 60. 4 times 1 is 4. So 64 and 4 in the tenths place, 1 in the hundredths, 8 in the thousandths. 64 and 418 thousandths. Now let's put these numbers in expanded and word form. For number 18, I'm going to actually use my place value chart. I have 0.917. Using a place value chart can really help you with expanded form. So expanded form is when I take each digit and write its value. I can ignore zeros in expanded form. So let's go straight to the 9. I have a 9, and it's in my tenths place. So I would write 9 times 1/10. Next, I add to that a 1, and my 1 is in the hundredths place. So 1 times 1, 100th. And I add to that a 7, which is in my thousandths place. So 7 times 1, 1,000th. And that is your expanded form. So I have 9 times 1/10, 1 times 1 100th, and 7 times 1 1,000th. And that equals 917. So I just read what's after the decimal point as if it was a whole number. So 917, and then I put the place value of the last digit, thousandths. All right, I hope this was helpful. Feel free to pause, rewind, watch it over and over again. Have a great day, and I'll see you later. Bye.